How we doing today, traders? This is Jeff Kohler, the Option Addict from OptionAddict.net. Feels pretty weird sitting back in the chair here with my video software working properly. Let's hope it stays that way. Anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And I can only think of one way to start off the new year, and that's with the watch list.
Let's get ready to rumble!
So here's some things you need to know about the upcoming week. Big economic announcements are going to be FOMC minutes, non-farm payrolls, and unemployment due out this week. At the same time, you also need to be aware that the market's going to be closed the 1st and the 2nd. So we'll have 2 days, the stock exchange shut down. So be prepared. Anyway, as you take a look here at the chart of the S&P 500, I've been talking about this recently, but you can see that things are just kind of coiling up pretty nicely on the indices. You'll see this pattern going on across the Dow, the NASDAQ, etc. However, one thing I did point out earlier was that we have also retreated out of this zone to an extent, and this is kind of that support/resistance area that's been the S&P's been battling for about the last 8 or 9 months. So I don't know. I'm pretty neutral on the market going forward until another hammer drops, but I wouldn't expect us to drop too much further than about 1460, maybe 1455 heading into this week. So don't expect any dramatic movements out of the markets, but if you're looking for some of the stocks that are going to make the biggest movements, I've got the list. Let's start off with a couple of price patterns. First one is Sohu, ticker symbol SOHU. And I brought this up on the blog earlier in the week, but there's a nice little triangle forming here. It's an explosive stock when it gets in the mindset of moving. Watch for a breakout to the upside. Resistance is right around 55, 56. Next is SPW. Very similar pattern here, although this one might take a little bit longer to form. You can see it's right around its apex. Next is YZC. In China in general, I'll bring that up a little bit later, but you can see similar pattern here. Things are kind of forming a nice little symmetrical triangle. For the most part, these are continuation patterns, but can just as easily be reversal patterns, so make sure you're watching them for breakouts. Next is Google. Same thing. Again, this one could have a little bit longer to form. Being that it's up at resistance, it might come test support one more time. ATK in the defense sector. You're looking at this. This is a nice little symmetrical triangle as well. Good for about a $10 pop once it breaks. GILD is the next. And this is a little more of the ascending triangle, as you can see here, horizontal resistance. Next, MRX of the descending triangle species, and if you're going to trade this, wait for a break below about 25.5 to take any action on some puts. Next is AFLAC. Yeah, I know I couldn't do anything better than some boring insurance stocks, but hey, nice little setup here. If you look at this, this is going to be good for about a 6-point breakout to the upside if it breaks resistance. Next is CNA. Descending triangle, you can see this here pretty clearly. Wait for a break of about 32.5 before entering. Next is AME. Nice little ascending triangle. Still have a little ways to go before it breaks out. And last but not least, ZOLT. That's right, good old ZOLT. You can see this breaking out of a nice symmetrical triangle. I wouldn't be too surprised to see it run right up to 50 in a jiffy. So, Option Addict loves ZOLT. Next, I got a list of other stocks I'm going to be buying and selling this week. Make sure you have your pause button ready, because here comes the list. Alright, last but not least, a couple other stocks I'm looking to break out or break down. We're going to start with RBN, which you can see had a nice little breakout as of Friday. Next is CLF, Cleveland Cliffs, and if you're looking at this one here, can see resistance, and it's just barely above that. It's a good risk-reward trade right here. It's easy to manage risk, and there's a lot of potential upside in this stock. And last but not least is KWK of stocks I'm looking to break out. You can see this one's already started that procedure. So make sure you catch these quickly before they get too extended. Next stocks that are going to break down, I'm watching ALMN. Remember this from our bearish list. We've had about 4 different good bearish trades on this stock. Last but not least, Lincoln. This one has a little ways to go, but you can see some good support here at 56. It's kind of curling over, so if it wants to close below 56, make sure you get long some puts. Other things you ought to be watching this week, water transport, specifically the pull of DRYS. There's a lot of controversy going on here as to whether these stocks are actually going to reverse and offer any good upside. And while I'm not totally convinced that that's going to happen yet, keep an eye on them. There's at least some good premiums here for spread trades. As you can see, implied volatility is trading at phenomenal levels. I also want you to pay attention to online brokers. And I mentioned this right around the collapse of E-Trade, but these stocks are still trading near their highs despite the rest of the market trading pretty poorly. Last but not least, watch China. I'm not too convinced of which way it's going to go yet. A lot of stocks are in kind of a neutral pattern, but it looks like things are getting ready for a big move to the upside or downside. So make sure you're watching China. Make sure you're watching machinery. Machinery stocks are going to be doing really well, and metal stocks looking pretty weak. So if you don't like anything on the list, there's a couple industry groups to go shopping in. As I said, I'm pretty stoked for the new year. Hope you all are as well. So let's not waste any more time. This is the Option Addict. That was my watch list, and thanks for watching.
The Zen philosopher Basho once wrote, "A flute with no holes is not a flute, and a donut with no hole is a Danish."